So, on the 26th of March 1921, 1 month after the unveiling of the Burbage War Memorial, a somewhat smaller personal service was held for the families of the 59 fallen. This was to mark the creation of a rose garden surrounding the memorial. So the story begins. The story of the rose garden was all but lost as it fell from living memory. A chance find by Nick Davis at Croft Carboux in 2004 was passed on to the Heritage Group. This was a simple black framed piece of card listing the fallen names and the roses. The frame was beyond repair, but on the rear was written in pencil, Mrs. Kennel, 78 3/4 Pinkley Road. Albert Kennel, we found, was one of the names later added to the east side panel of the memorial. Albert was employed as a hatter before enlisting in 1915. By 1917, he'd been discharged unfit from the army, and he died aged 41 in November 1920, leaving a wife and daughter, and is buried in St. Catherine's Churchyard. There was no date on the card, but an original invitation owned by the Asbury family came to light, confirming that the date was the 26th of March 1921. Over the next few years, we appealed in the press for more details, and along with research on the horticultural heritage of Burbage, details of the garden came to light. In 1921, Charles Chamberlain Hurst, the owner of Burbage Nurseries, suggested to the War Memorial Committee that he would provide and maintain a rose garden surrounding the memorial. A rose for each of the 59 fallen was chosen, and a nameplate to be erected with each rose. The committee gladly accepted this offer, along with a trust fund set up by Hurst, which guaranteed it would be maintained by his heirs and successors for all time. And this is to your right of your screen, you'll see that this is a scan of the original card. We found a press report from the event on the day at the planting. The Burbage Military Band and the Old Comrades marched to the memorial at 3 o'clock on the afternoon of the Saturday, 26th of March. The military band played Chopin's Funeral March. The hymn, The Sower Went Forth Sowing, and Rector Pugh once again addressed the crowd, and he heaped praise on Major Hurst for keeping his guarantee on the cost of the planting and the provision of the garden's upkeep. And he also hoped that parents would endeavour to impress upon their children and forthcoming generations to look upon the rose garden of remembrance with honour and respect. 2 more hymns were sang, How Bright These Glorious Spirits Shine, and with the sweet words of peace. This inspired the Heritage Group to find details of the roses, and we will now show a short video of each soldier's biography and a history of the roses. We found 58 illustrations out of 59 of the roses. Many, of course, are now obsolete and no longer commercially produced, and the only one that we couldn't find an illustration of was Golden Mayor. Then the video we're about to play can be viewed again later from the PDF attached to your invite. So now I'm going to play the video. was lovely. And I think the music was very appropriate as well. And hopefully we'll get that all printed out and we can put a display up at some point with all the biographies on for you to read. So with 3 photographs of the day, and these were produced as part of the Baxter's postcard series of the Burbage War Memorial. The man with his back to you in the camel coat, that's Charles Chamberlain Hurst, who can be seen clearly on every photograph directing the plantings. And as you can see, some of the roses are already in the ground with the nameplates at the side of each one. And this is another one showing a female relative placing the nameplate at the side of the rose. The invitation. Who would be present? In the video of the roses, we've listed each individual fallen family who would likely to have been present. As previously mentioned, the invite came from Reg Asbury, seen on the left, with his brother's medals, who attended the service as a child along with his age 11, along with his surviving brother and parents. And this is the last picture we have of the planting. This one with a child, probably one of the children of the fallen. Families appear to have taken part in the planting along with the workers from the nurseries. Unfortunately, we can't identify any of the people. I'd love to think so at some point something would come to light. So the population of Burbage in 1921 was over 3,000, 1,700 of which were adults. 3 sets of brothers are named on the memorial, along with many of the fallen being cousins or related by marriage. There's 452 known close relatives of the 59 fallen, and many of the Burbage families intermarried, and they came from large families of the time, where at least 8 children was not uncommon. Wormleightons, Robinsons, Pauls and Foxons are just a few of the related families. Also present would be work colleagues, as many had been employed locally in large concerns such as Sketchley's and the wider hosiery and boot and shoe industries. And many of the young men were also members of sports teams, chapels, and the Liberal and the Constitutional clubs. The namestakes. These are the 11 of the original surviving namestakes, each showing rank, initials, and the family name. These were discovered in 2010 in the late Tom King's garage, where when the family was clearing out his home after Tom had moved to sheltered accommodation. It's thought that Tom rescued these when the Rose Garden was renovated in 1996. And some of you may be familiar with the plates are similar to the plant name stakes manufactured at the time. So some of the statistics of the fallen. When the memorial was unveiled, there were 54 names. However, it was found that 3 from the dye works cottages on Rugby Road had been omitted. There was Allen in 1917, Newman 1915, and Worthington, an early one in November 1914. These are the cottages that the row of houses that are still there, which were near the entrance to Sketchley's on the bottom of Rugby Road. Also, Kennel and Foxon had died in 1920, and these were included in the roses, and eventually their names were added to the east pier of the memorial, probably after 1923. From 1921 to 1948, the garden became a place of solace for some of the families, especially the ones that had no known grave, or the ones buried in distant lands to which there was no hope of visiting. The grandsons of David Robertson told of remembering their grandmother Hilda, wife of David, visiting the garden weekly to tend the rose and remember her husband. The grandsons finally got to visit David's grave in France in 2000, as you can see in the picture here. This is one of the earliest war memorial pictures, which I'm guessing is probably the summer after the roses were planted. And you see the picket fence was put around to protect the holly hedge, which eventually grew. And you can spot quite a few of the roses there. From 1921 to 1948, one of the things in 1922, Hearst left the Burbage nurseries and rented it out to George Geary, and eventually sold it to Geary in 1930. We think this was after he lost most of his income in the Wall Street crash. And we think that probably the trust fund then may have disappeared, that was maintained to maintain the garden. However, maintenance of the garden was continued by Burbage nurseries. And then, of course, World War II then had an impact on the village once more. This is a later memorial, probably between the wars. As you can see now, the hedge is well grown up around the picket fence, and a wood gate was put on. We believe there's probably been 2 or 3 wood gates over the years to keep the war memorial protected. So 1948 saw the unveiling of the names that were put on the north there of the memorial, and once again the Rose Garden hosts an unveiling ceremony. So from 1948 to 1999, this period after the Rose Garden returns to being an established part of the village. Some of the garden and the holly around behind the holly hedge began to deteriorate. However, the Burbage nurseries continued to undertake the maintenance during this time. This is a picture of some of the workers of the nurseries. Some of the old ones told me that they remembered regularly maintaining the war memorial through the 1940s and 50s and 60s. So the Burbage Parish Council was reformed again after 50 years in 1986, and after 10 years, one of the projects was to restore the memorial, and it was also the 75th anniversary of the Royal British Legion, and there was a rose brought out to commemorate this, and some of those were purchased and put along the back of the war memorial. Burbage Royal British Legion was closed in 1975, but the contacts were still kept with the Hinckley branch. And this is the memorial plate on a stone at the back of the memorial for people who donated. You can probably see quite a few familiar names there, and also some of the descendants of the fallen from both world wars. In 1999, new gates were added to give the memorial a beautiful frame. And then in 2011, we decided to have a 90 years commemoration of the war memorial being unveiled. And there was a project, part of the Leicestershire County Council Heritage Forum, that encouraged people to do displays and work towards the centenary of commemorating the World War I from 1914 to 1919. We found some evidence of the original Royal British Legion, and we had quite a good display that day at St Catherine's, which finished with a short service at the War Memorial. part of this project, we decided, the Heritage Group decided that we'd replant the rose garden and add a display board. We then undertook research in some of our scruffy notes. We undertook research to try and trace the original plants. We looked in old catalogues and of Burbage nurseries, but sadly, out of the 59 roses, we could only find 5 original ones that were still commercially grown. However, David Austin helped us, and we managed to find the rest, which were lookalikes, as we got descriptions of them. And we had a lovely day at Austin's looking through all their catalogues to try and select some out. And then this was the plan we had. Eventually we found that we've got room for 36 roses. So this was planted out in the November of 2015. So on the 25th of November, it was November the 8th actually, 2015, we unveiled the new information board with some of the descendants of the Foxen and the Aspreys. And we also had a display at the Congregational Church. And this is the memorial board. So now we've got that for all time, so passers-by can gem upon some of the history of the garden. And finally, the war memorial was taken by Jeff yesterday. And recently, the maintenance of the garden was passed into the safe hands of the new Burbage Royal British Legion. And I'd like to close with the words of Rector Pugh, who hoped that the following generations would look upon the Rose Garden of remembrance with honour and respect. In the past century and into the next, I hope that the Burbage people has fulfilled his wish. Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody from the group who's taken part in the enormous amount of research that we've done in the last few weeks, and Paul Williams for putting it all together. So thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it. Right, so if you unmute, you can, if there's any questions anybody would like to ask.
Well, can I thank you on behalf of the Parish Council, Sylvia, and everybody for putting this together? Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, very good presentation. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got some of the original. I'll show some of you at the beginning. These are the original. As you can see, they're very much like the Victorian nameplates on the plants. I've often spotted these going around National Trust gardens and things. So Hearst must have had these. Some of them are in quite good nick. We've got 2 that have broken off at the bottom. We've got 11 altogether. We were surmising the other day, we wondered if there's any more buried under the roses. But anyway, thanks to Todd King, at least we've got those.
Got some, yeah.
Lovely. Right. Anything anybody else would like to add? No? I've struck you all done. Oh.
We're impressed.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I'll just say I've got the original card here.
Yes, Paul's got
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Which will return to Sylvia for safekeeping at some stage.
And we'll hopefully get some kind of a display put up, arranged, and perhaps get it all mounted up. Perhaps it could go and live in the Millennium Hall.
Yeah.
You've got plenty of space.
It just shows you, doesn't it, from one little card like that, all that came out of it, thanks to Nick Davis's Eagle Eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What was the population you said in 1930?
1921. We think it was somewhere over 3,000.
Yes, that's what I thought you said.
Yeah, there was what would you say? There was about 1,700 adults on the 1915 census, they'd be aged from 15 to 65. And the amount of kids that everybody had in those days, you can probably double that.
Yeah.
So we're still talking about three. I mean, we're still really
Yeah.
still a relatively small village.
Basically 6,000 most. Okay.
On Monday, I think the Legion have their first working party to tend the garden. Is that right,
Oh, great.
David?
That's right, yeah, 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Very good.
Well,
So
Very good.
we're doing a little bit of weeding.
best wishes with the weather.
Yeah,
Yes.
fingers crossed. It doesn't look too cheery next week, does it?
No, it doesn't. Getting cold again.
Yeah,
We were just thinking, I don't know whether the roses will need pruning, David.
they will definitely. I had a look at them the other day.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, it's the time to do it.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, about March, April, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Next
Before we
week.
start flowering. Anyway, hopefully, if we can keep on top of that, it'll be good. Keep it tidy. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Nothing else to add.
Nope.
Heritage Group committee members. Remember, we've got the meeting
Monday.
afternoon,
I'll send the log-on details out shortly.
and then we've got our Heritage Group monthly meeting on Thursday with Paul Gardner on Inclean District, past and present.
I'll be sending that out as well.
So that'll be coming out. Oh, and the newsletter will be going out soon.
That's going out soon. Yeah.
So we're all keeping in touch, and hopefully we'll get let loose sooner or later.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, when it's safe. Okay then. Right. Thanks everybody.